Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
And now,
you're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. We're very privileged and very pleased that we have with us somebody who is, in the Yiddish parlance, a big macher. He was communication strategist, political advisor, CEO. He was one of the longest-serving Trump advisors. He's a spokesman for the Donald Trump 2016 presidential campaign, transition team, senior advisor to the Trump 2020 election campaign. He was a partner, executive vice president at Jamestown Associates. You could have watched him between 2017 2018 on CNN, and then he moved to Newsmaker. And now he's the CEO of a new company called Getter, a conservative social network. And I thank Ushi Teitelbaum and Palm Tree Relations for helping setting up our interview. So, Jason, good to have you on the program. Thank you for joining us.
Zev, is great to be with you. Glad to be here on Talkline, and this is exciting. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and glad to be right in the thick of it.
You were right in the thick of it during the Trump administration, and you worked with him afterwards. Are you still in touch with Donald Trump?
Yes, in fact, actually, just today, I spent about an hour with him over in his office at Trump Tower, which was good. We were talking about Getter. I don't have any news to make right this moment, but so that's going to answer that question before you ask it. But I'm continuing to be a very squeaky wheel, and so we had a good conversation today. I'll leave it at that. But I think President Trump is someone who look. I mean, he'll tell you he won in 2016 because of social media. He realizes that the way that the world is shifting, that now free speech only matters if certain people agree with your free speech, and political discrimination is really rampant. And I mean, that's not only why, I wrote an op-ed that's in today's Washington Times about how this last year has been the worst year for censorship in America's history, but also part of the reason why I helped to launch Getter, free speech platform, where make sure that nobody gets deplatformed or canceled because of how they're expressing their political beliefs.
No, I hear, and obviously technology is changing, and from what I've read, and we'll talk about it shortly, how Getter is using new cutting-edge technology to make its impact. But you ran the president's 2016 campaign, 2020. You represented him as well. Does that mean you're going to be there helping him in 4 years from now as well?
I do have to say, so I'll give you a little bit of a dodge in that he is not.
You don't have to dodge me, not on CNN.
But he very much sounds like someone. He very much sounds like someone who is planning on running. He has not said the magical words to me, but he sounds like someone who's running. I'll kind of put it at that. And the answer is, of course, if President Trump's running for anything else, I'll be there to help him in every way possible that I can. But until he says the magic words, we're not quite there yet. First, I need to get him on the Getter platform, then we can talk about winning in 2024. But first, I got to get him signed up.
I'm curious now, did you get any reaction from him, because Cuomo was his nemesis and never took an opportunity not to attack Donald Trump? Does he feel any sense of elation or vindication that here you have Andy Cuomo in New York accused of all kinds of things, and he dumped on the vaccine that developed during the Trump presidency, and look at what's happening today. We had to resign.
I shouldn't say surprisingly, because I just knowing President Trump as well as I do, but I think many folks might be a little surprised to know that we haven't seen President Trump beat up on Andrew Cuomo, and probably won't. I mean, I think he thought that, or thinks that it's not as though Andrew Cuomo is no longer with us. He's just no longer with us in office, or at least after the next 14 days. But there's a bit of a live by the wokeism, die by the wokeism, or live by the virtue signaling, die by the virtue signaling that we've seen from Andrew Cuomo and the Democrats. But look, is Cuomo definitely a jerk? Absolutely. I think a lot of the things that were thrown at him, I think he never really had a chance to. They were never really fleshed out in the public. There was never so much of there was no sort of formal trial. And I think that I think just seeing that happen to Cuomo, I think President Trump, someone who's had a lot of false accusations made against him, I think he looks at that and say, hey, this is. You get a little bit concerned about the direction of the country when people just get thrown overboard before there's any sort of formal trial or things like that. But politically, yeah, I mean, he and just interaction-wise, Cuomo's a big jerk. But he also never really had a chance to explain his case. So. Anyways, that's just probably a little longer an answer that you're looking for. But he was not dunking on Cuomo at all.
No, and I hear that, and the truth is, I don't know if it was him or somebody spoke about due process, and really, even if somebody is accused of all kinds of things, there is due process, and I've seen some commentators who you think would not be sympathetic to Cuomo saying, hey, maybe it was Rudy Giuliani who said there has to be some sort of due process. You can't just go by there's no trial by media.
Yeah, and that's that's so much of, and that fits in with everything that we're with why you see Getter and you see the kind of this counterculture pushback on these Silicon Valley oligarchs, and hopefully the signal does not go out this time. But you see these handful of small group of people determining what your free speech rights are. And, that's I think it's a concern anytime there's this rush to judgment or people get eliminated or wiped out. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when people are being deplatformed and shadow banned for saying that the COVID-19 came from a lab in Wuhan. And, whoa, wait a minute, you can't say something that radical or we're going to have to go and deplatform you. Or they dared to criticize the anointed one, Dr. Anthony Fauci, or heaven forbid they raise issues with the election. I think the media is so quick to rush to judgment in anything. Again, by no means am I, defending Andrew Cuomo. I mean, guy seems like a total jerk, but he never got a chance really. I mean, today was the first time that he really tried to push back on this stuff. But it doesn't matter. It's look at Chrissy Teigen. One day she's the darling, find out she's a bully. Next day she's out.
Well, that's the media. In fact, the media helped build up Donald Trump, because they figured that it would be good for their ratings. And then when he won, which they didn't expect, then they try to destroy him.
Exactly. No, and that's, part of the thing, too, is that, we saw it this last year, whether it be with, like I brought up the COVID reference, or even when the media and big media and big tech teamed up to make sure that the Hunter Biden story never got out, that there was not a robust discussion about the laptop. And in fact, Facebook and Twitter shutting down accounts and not allowing people to share any of that news. We've never seen anything like that in U.S. history before. I mean, the fact that that literally this handful of people can determine what is and what isn't free speech, I think is concerning. And I mean, now obviously we're talking about the U.S., but Zev, obviously you're someone who's interviewed a lot of folks internationally. If you're fired up as an American about these handful of these guys, billionaires in Silicon Valley, picking winners and losers in the free speech debate. Imagine if you're not even in the U.S. Imagine if you're in Israel. Imagine if you're in the U.K. Imagine if you're in Brazil. Like, wait a minute. Why are these 3 billionaires in California tell me what I can or can't say as a resident of my own country?
Absolutely correct. In fact, the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran can say all kinds of terrible things about destroying the West, destroying Israel. His tweets have not been taken off, but others exercising free speech, including saying the conspiracy, that the whole COVID originated in China, will get thrown off. And there's something wrong with the whole system here, but maybe it's society. You've been on CNN, you're on Newsmax, so you're also part of the media. But from what I understand, we have changed where it's not only have we become so partisan, but even a group like the American Civil Liberties Union may not like them, but they always defended unpopular causes. Today, the ACLU is on record saying they will only defend causes they like. They will no longer defend causes they don't like. We've changed as a society. No,
and I think it's a slippery slope, because right now, yes, much of the the passion for the free speech movement is in the right of center space, and it's not just the U.S. It's even the same in most of the Western world, so to speak. But it wasn't that long ago that the passion for the free speech debate was, say, surrounding gay rights or gay marriage, or even before that, when we talk about women's rights. And so the pendulum in the free speech debate swings pretty frequently. And that's why I tell my my Democratic friends is, hey, you might be clapping or looking to dunk on someone who's in the right of center space for being censored or deplatformed. The pendulum's going to come back, and you're going to find yourself the exact same woke people are going to come back and say, hey, we now agree or disagree with your position, so time to deplatform me. It's a slippery slope.
Now, it is a slippery slope. By the way, did you have any criticism or face any discrimination or any problems because you're such a staunch defender and ally of President Donald Trump? Did it affect your career at all? And I'm curious how you got hired by CNN.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Actually, it's funny on the CNN side. So I teamed up with CNN early 2017, was with them until just about the end of 2018, beginning of almost the beginning of 2019, as you pointed out. At one point, CNN, in fact, it was, I believe, during the presidential transition, I got done doing an afternoon appearance, and I was walking out, and Jeff Zucker, the CEO of CNN, followed me out and said, hey, Jason, I want to talk to you, and I think you'd be a good fit if you don't go into the administration. I think you'd be a good fit to join the network. And I will say that in the first 6-7 months that I was with CNN, I will say, look, there were a lot of times there'd be I might find myself on a panel where it's like a 5-on-1 or something like that. That it's actually kind of more fun then, because you can enrage them, and they're not, they don't know how to work with each other, and so you can sometimes it's fun to be that one person, just throw bombs and make them all enraged. So that can be fun. But toward the end, by the time we got into 2018, they did not want to actually have any debate at all. It really became, I think CNN made a business decision. And again, this is business because you're talking about, they're making billions of dollars, that they'd make a lot more money being MSNBC light than having the traditional CNN mantra of being down the middle and fostering debate from both sides. So I think they started beginning in 2017 of wanting to have people on both sides. A year later, realized, hey, all the money is just attacking President Trump, and that's why you don't see any Trump supporters that are having anything to do with the network anymore.
And it worked for them for a while, but since Donald Trump left office, I think the ratings have really gone downhill.
So it's funny you say that, because they have. But they play the game so much in the the targeted demographic universe, and they find ways to to angle and spin it. But here's the thing: the liberals and the Democrats were fired up. They were fired up to go after President Trump. I mean, look at the way that what was it? I think last week, 3 of the top 10 books in the New York Times bestseller list were Trump post-presidency books. I mean, I think the only group of people in the country who like to talk about President Trump more than people who voted for him are people who voted against him. It's that's really where Biden's so boring and Kamala Harris is such a disaster that nobody really wants to talk about them. But President Trump is just he's everything he does is ratings gold. And so when he stepped aside, the wokesters, their ratings suffered.
Jason, when is your book coming out?
Oh boy, I don't think you're going to see a book from me anytime soon. But at some point, odds are I'll probably do something. But boy, I tell you, it'll be a good one. But probably years down the road.
We're speaking with Jason Miller. He is a communication strategist. He's a political advisor, CEO, best known as being the chief spokesman for Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, 2020 campaign, and currently he has a new group. He's a CEO of a group called Getter, which is a conservative social network. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Talkline radio and TV with Zeb Brenner is just phenomenal. Everybody concerned about the Jewish community should listen and watch. He has the best guests. He asks the most interesting questions. He's always so well prepared. It's talk radio and television from a Jewish point of view at its very best.
To advertise on the Talkline network and Talkline's email and social media blasts reaching over 70,000 people, please call 212-769-1925, extension 100. That's 212-769-1925, extension 100. Or email info@talklinenetwork.com.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And now your host.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. Jason Miller is our guest. He is a political advisor, communication strategist. He's a CEO. He's best known as being the chief spokesman for Donald Trump's 2016 campaign. He also was involved in the 2020 re-election campaign. He still maintains his connection. He was with CNN for a while. He's become a contributor to Newsmax, and now he's the CEO of a company called Getter, a conservative social network, which I believe has about 2 million viewers at this point in time, correct?
Yeah, right about 2 million users. And, the fascinating thing on this is it's about 50-50 U.S. versus international. So about 1 million folks in the U.S., 1 million others around the world. And Brazil is about 15%. Of our customer base, which is fascinating. We have some of the Bolsonaros who've joined the platform, but it's really exciting to see all of this international interest in the platform. And there's really kind of a consistent theme running through it, is that people are fired up and they're ticked off at big tech, and this feeling that big tech is oppressing or censoring or deplatforming and practicing political discrimination. And it's a beautiful thing, I think, when people in this right of center space, which of course we want people from all aspects of ideology, but when so many people in different countries who, no one wakes up in Japan saying I'm a Republican or Democrat, same way, no one wakes up in Brazil and says I'm Labor or I'm Tory. But people can wake up and say, I support free speech. I'm tired of these big tech elites telling me what to do. I want to join this platform where I'm not going to get kicked off.
Well, but isn't it so difficult because you're up against the big boys, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Googles, with who knows how many hundreds of millions of people. So anytime you start something, it's going to be small in comparison, and who knows how long it can take to grow big. And by that time, the new innovations, and they've moved on to other platforms.
Yep, and there's always the chance on that. But here's my philosophy on things is I think most people are upset and think that power is consolidated in the hands of too few people. We've seen this broader trend with some of the traditional media consolidation over the last few years, over the last decade or so. But we're really seeing it in social media. We really have these, when we say, I throw out a term like big tech oligarch, and again, hopefully the signal doesn't drop. That's not just because
they're listening.
They're
listening.
Yeah, that's not just because it sounds cute, because that's what it is. I mean, that is, if you want to see what an oligarch is, it's these guys who run these big tech companies in Silicon Valley. But we could wait for Congress to fix it. Which, if you're waiting for Congress to fix anything, A, it might be a while, and B, there are some smart people in Congress. There are a lot more unsmart people than smart people in Congress, in my opinion. The good chance they just screw it up, make it even worse. That's one thing. We can follow the court route, which again, I applaud people who've made the effort, including President Trump, to try to seek some kind of legal remedy for the brain damage that these big tech companies have caused. Or you can take the free market approach and say, you know what, I'm going to come up with a platform that's bigger, better, badder, and cooler than anything that the big tech guys have come out with, and we're going to have the free market show. And look, we got to 1 million users in 3 days, fastest ever for any social media company in history. We're at 2 million now. We're continuing to grow, and so that's the approach that I took, and that's why I've told everyone who either believes in free speech or opposes cancel culture, come and check out Getter. It's a cool platform.
Now, I spoke to Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz about this issue, and according to him, and he's probably correct, is that the big three companies don't have to give equal time, don't have to really engage in free speech. They're pretty much private companies. I don't mean not publicly regulated companies. So they can pretty much do what they want. And what he said was, if you don't like it, form your own company, which is exactly what you did. But it may be, unless they're regulated, and the FCC does not, monitor them the same way they do cable TV and public broadcast stations, and cable stations around the country. Unless that happens, they can do what they want, and they can throw you off one day and put you back on and play the game with no consequences.
Well, yeah, and I think you're exactly right. And I think where you're going to have a reckoning at some point is with Section 230, which allows. Keep in mind that came about in 1996 when they were, we had essentially blogs back then, or these online forums of people, even before you had Facebook or Twitter, these social media platforms. But what we're seeing now with the political discrimination, that was never something that Section 230 meant to defend against. Section 230 was to say, if you're going to have this digital town square, that we want to protect the town square, that we're not going to hold it against the town square itself for people going on there and being knuckleheads, for lack of a better term. We want to make sure that town square is always there and vibrant. But also, they never thought that, well, hey, is there really some overlords in charge of the town square saying, this person can speak, but that person can't speak? That's what our geniuses in Congress back in the mid-90s never envisioned, or never really fully thought of. And that's the problem right now, is that look, I think there are some issues that need to be raised and dealt with, probably both from Congress and from the legal side. I just don't have much confidence they'll do it right, or they'll do it quickly.
I would assume that if Donald J. Trump, the former president, were to join Getter, it would bring a lot of his followers to the platform as well.
I would say, I can tell you from market research, it would be a lot, and it would be very quick. And so that's, we're talking in the tens of millions territory, but there's such a passion, such a hunger to have something to push back against big tech, to kind of get out from their clutches. You're exactly right, Zev.
So is he joining in the near future, or is that still a matter of negotiations and discussion?
We're still negotiating, and somehow I found myself in a negotiation game with one of someone who actually wrote the book on negotiating, which is kind of an experience itself. But
the art of the deal.
I'll save a chapter on that for my own book at some point. But it is fun sitting across from the guy who wrote Art of the Deal and saying, okay, let's negotiate some more. So it's fun. But here's the thing. President Trump definitely wants to be back on social media. He knows he's able to get his message across now, but it's different. And I think he wants to be back on social media. And he also knows he's got to measure twice, cut once. He's got to kick the tires. I mean, when we have conversations, he really gets into the granularity about how exactly does your moderation policy work? How exactly does your storage work? He's asking the tough questions, the questions he should be asking. And if I were him, I'd be doing the same thing.
So, but you do believe in the passage of time, you will come to some sort of agreement where he will be part of it?
I think that just out of an abundance of caution to make sure I don't get myself in any trouble, I will hedge on that and say that I'll give you a very political answer, like President Trump has many options. Certainly, I hope to get them. That's why I'm making the big effort to. But I wouldn't want to put words in his mouth on this particular thing, since we're in the middle of talks.
Now, there was some point before he left office where there was some speculation that the president would form his own TV network. There was even a rumor, which I believe to be true, they would buy CNN, but at least he would form a media company, a television cable network. Was any truth to that, or is that still part of the lexicon somewhere?
You know what? There are, just since I've been gone for a couple months now, I know there's still some plans. I know they still have some bigger plans on the media front. I do not believe anything's imminent. But one of the things too is that, keep in mind, the traditional media models are kind of dead. And everybody's trying to figure out how best you incorporate aspects of traditional media with social media. And I think that's where you're going to see the president really look to reemerge and engage. I think that even the aspect of cable news in so many ways is antiquated at this point. I mean, it is hard work to grow a network. You have to pay all these carriers and get picked up in different systems, and it's this whole. I mean, it's practically a decades-long process when you look how long it's taken people to.
But Newsmax seems to be picking up some steam lately, right? They're at the expense of Fox.
I tell you, Ruddy, and obviously I say this is a biased Newsmax contributor. Ruddy's done it pretty darn fast, and I think that he's really been a testament. But look, I mean, Chris has also been at this for a while himself. I mean, it's. It does not happen that fast, but it's where I think President Trump, you're going to see him as something a little bit more on the social media side as opposed to the traditional media. But again, I don't want to cut off any options for him.
Is the president disappointed in Fox News? Is he still watching them? Did he feel that he was betrayed by what was once he considered an ally?
Of course, he's been frustrated by Fox News. I think going to even before election night, there were a number of issues. The election night, the early decision on Arizona, greatly upset him. That's not too big a surprise. I think the lack of attention that Fox has paid to the voting concerns around 2020, I think are frustrating. And even just the little ticky-tack things we saw with Fox going in and editing one of President Trump's answers from his interview with Dan Bongino last weekend show that Fox is worried about Fox. Fox is not a pro-Trump network. Fox is a pro-Fox network. And whatever they think is going to help them, whether it be with advertisers or whatever they think they're going to do, that's what's driving their interest, not the desire to say help President Trump.
We're speaking and looking at new social networks. We're looking at the Trump years as well. Our guest is Jason Miller, communication strategist, political advisor, CEO, best known as chief spokesman for the Trump 2016-2020 campaign. His new company is called Getter. In the years that you were in the White House with Donald Trump and working with him, and what impresses me is we had somebody, Thomas Rose, the other week, who worked in Vice President Pence's office. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Thomas Rose, but he said that there was an atmosphere which was very welcoming to the Jewish community, especially to observant Orthodox Jews. You had a kosher kitchen in the White House. You had a booth for the Festival of Booths in the White House. So he said there was a very nice atmosphere, and he has a wonderful relationship with the Jewish community, especially the Orthodox one. Can you give us some more insight?
Yeah, I mean, look, you look at a lot of the President Trump's key advisors, and just to be clear on this, so Stephen Miller was at the White House the entire time. I was always on the outside, but obviously very active and at the White House quite a bit. But, I ended up in President Trump's orbit because of Jared Kushner, and so I'm very close with Jared and Avi Berkowitz. Obviously, their work on the Abraham Accords and a number of things in the Middle East really speaks for itself. But you look at Stephen Miller, you look at a lot of other Stephen Mnuchin. Many of President Trump's most prominent advisors are the Jewish faith. I think there's always a great affinity towards Israel, I'd say it was a very friendly and inviting place for people of the Jewish community, and so I would agree with Thomas in his description.
No, so I was just impressed to hear some of the religious amenities that one wouldn't expect to see in the White House would exist there. It didn't get a lot of press attention, so when I heard it, it sort of caught my ear, I should say, and I certainly was impressed with that. What stands out during those 4 years? The media portrayed it as being tumultuous and, a lot of factions and fighting and backbiting, etc. How would you characterize the 4 years there? You're looking from the outside, but you were from the outside on the inside.
Yeah, I think, look, the swamp fights back. And I think that President Trump is really the only second outsider we've ever had in American politics to get to the White House, and the first one who's truly an outsider. Of course, Andrew Jackson had been in a number of offices before, but it's when you're going to upend the apple cart, the swamp fights back. And it doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat. If you're part of the swamp, you're part of the swamp. And I think that the fact that President Trump basically had this two-front war, which number one was doing the actual job that he was elected to do, but then also to go and try to defend himself from the attacks from the swamp. I think if President Trump did not have that constant distraction, I mean, I think only what we could have accomplished, and he accomplished, in my opinion, more than anyone else in their first term in presidential history. But it's just a reminder that in D.C. there's only one party, and that's the swamp. And if it takes someone really special to take on the swamp.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the swamp ever went away. But okay, because you see so much corruption, so many things that are going on. In the few moments we have left, you mentioned CNN and its bias towards Trump, and you were there, and obviously things changed. Did you notice or encounter some of the things which the Jewish community is very upset about at CNN? Is there a bias against Israel?
Well, I mean, here's the thing on the bias against Israel. I didn't pick up that. I mean, there are a number of very proud members of the Jewish American community at CNN who work at CNN. They're pretty good friends, and none of my Jewish friends at CNN ever expressed anything that they felt uncomfortable or there was a bias. Here's where and look, it's kind of another way of saying it. I think CNN would bend over backwards to basically try to offer what they would interpret or they would describe as being some, trying to show these alternative viewpoints like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and AOC and the crazed members of the squad, and saying, well, we can't just be in lockstep with Israel. We have to think about we have to think about other communities. And they would just bend over backwards so much to try to give a more positive spin on, say, some of the crazy.
And thank you, Jason Miller, communications strategist, political advisor, and CEO, best known as being the chief spokesman for Donald Trump's 2016-2020 campaign. He was with CNN, is with Newsmax, and currently his position is the CEO of Getter, a conservative social network company. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thank you for listening to Talkline Communications Network, America's leading Jewish radio and TV network since 1981. For continuous, non-stop Jewish broadcasting, please go right now online to TalklineCommunications.com. For more information on all of Talkline's Jewish radio and TV shows, please call 212-769-1925 or email info@talklinecommunications.com.
Our 24-hour-day listen line is 605-562-5174. That's 24-hour-day listen line, 605-562-5174. Thank you for listening.
Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.